introduce you, and then you can take over.
Good.
Okay. So, John Grim is affiliated faculty with the Yale Center for Environmental Justice. He's co-director with Mary Evelyn Tucker of the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology. Together, they organized 10 conferences on world religions and ecology at Harvard that explored the ecological and justice dimensions of the world religions. There are other credentials here, but they've been working together for many years to tell and spread the word about Thomas Berry and the related philosophies and movements. So with that, John, I think I will just spotlight you here. And I will turn it over to you. That's been my assumption. Is it your plan to just describe the site and show us some components?
I hadn't planned to take you to the site to show it to you.
Oh,
That would be helpful if someone can do that for me.
we can do that. Marianne
Good.
has the site up.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'll do it. Just a minute.
Do you need to say anything first before?
Marianne, I'll speak for a little bit before I get to the three wings, I'm calling them, and then maybe we can look at the site then.
Great.
Great. Thank you, John.
Great.
Good. So, Bob, thank you for the introduction, and it's good to be with you all. As I said, I was planning to begin at 7 p.m. my time, so I'm so pleased to be with you. I think it's helpful to just give some sense of who I am. There's been an introduction, but I come from North Dakota, and I found that's a telling place description for myself too. I grew up in a farming and hunting family, and so my sense of closeness to the land and to animals that were hunted for the table, not for trophies at all. It was a farm to table kind of situation. And I mention that because as I talk about this site, which is trying to bring forward issues of biodiversity loss and the whole question of where is our human awareness with regard to life on this planet and the relationship of life on the planet to our flourishing as humans and mutual flourishing, if I could put that. Namely, we humans have put great deal of pressure on biodiversity, and it's one of the major reasons why we developed this site, LivingEarthCommunity.com. So just with those opening remarks, I thought I would just talk a bit about the development of the site, how it came to be, what it looks like, and then maybe Marianne, we can go and take a look at it. And finally, then I wanted to end with three approaches that I thought might be helpful for a group, because I understand you all have some interest in, say, the work of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and questions related to more meaningful understandings of the cosmos and of the Earth itself than simply a science-based presentation. Those three ending interpretive pathways that I want to put forward are a shamanistic understanding of this website, a justice understanding, and a contemplative understanding. So I'll move in that direction as we come to the conclusion of my remarks. This site actually began in the summer of 2024. Mary Evelyn and I were going to China, and as I will say a bit later on in my remarks, we have been thinking about these issues of the question of human-Earth relations, along with our teacher, Thomas Berry. And so when we left for that travel in China, we asked two of our graduate students to take on a research project. They were working for us. And Tyler Nelson, who has remained with the Forum team and is now a front person for the Living Earth Community approach and website. Tyler Nelson did research on the question that we posed to him of sentience in the natural world. That's been a term that Mary Evelyn and I have used. If any of you have seen the film Journey of the Universe, you know that Brian Swim in that film refers to the term sentience as a way of talking about the livingness of the world. So sentience or affect or feeling or the capacity to shape one's relationship with others by virtue of a sensing dynamic in the being that's undertaking that sentience. We wanted to have a clear idea of what are people thinking now about sentience in the cellular world, the world of plants. We were very keen on entering into the studies of fungi. That's a new area in the last 30 years, which is on fire now with this question of sentience and communication. So basically, we were asking Tyler to raise the question about signaling in the natural world, communication in the natural world, from cellular life, even in terms of matter or inorganic matter, all the way to mammals. We asked another researcher, Oliver Mesmer, to research the question. We posed it in this way. If the world is speaking to itself, we humans are part of that world. We are ecological participants. How are we responding to the world speaking to us? So the website was birthed out of that initial set of questions. When we came back, these two researchers had assembled over 70 pages of annotated bibliography, and we knew we had something that was very rich. It's now over 300 pages of annotated materials, which are behind the website that we'll look at with Marianne, LivingEarthCommunity.com. So our initial intention was to position this new set of information in relationship to the projects that the Forum on Religion and Ecology has mounted for several years now. I don't know if all of you are familiar with our work since 1995 at Harvard Center for the Study of World Religions, where we did a 3-year series of conferences on religions of the world and ecology. You can see the connection, I'm sure. We were focused on individual religious traditions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and so forth. Western traditions, South Asian, East Asian, and especially indigenous traditions, which is the focus of my own research. We were asking a basic question: what is it in these religious traditions that relates to the natural world? I would humorously say to people, these religious traditions did not come from Mars. They all are human productions, to use that term. I think much more of the religious traditions than simply productions, but they're place-based. And consequently, within these traditions, there are innumerable references to their relationships to places. And as they developed over the centuries, of course, they spread, and these ecological, they use that term, ecological references amplified in these traditions. So the Religion and Ecology Project was oriented towards questions that our teacher, Thomas Berry, Mary Evelyn Tucker, and myself, we were students of Thomas Berry, and from the 1960s, when I met Thomas Berry, we were already in the 70s raising questions about ecological concern in our study as historians of religion. We then, after the conferences at Harvard, we took on several concluding conferences, 5 of them. One of them was on animals and religion. It was a remarkable conference held at the Harvard East-West Center. That's the major East Asian Studies Center at Harvard, run then by the prominent Confucian scholar Du Wei Ming, who attended every one of the conferences that we held at the Center for the Study of World Religions. He was very keen to promote this whole attention to the question of human relationships with the earth. And at that conference, then we, with the organizers, Paul Waldo and Kimberly Patton, we produced a lovely volume which is titled with a major phrase that Thomas Berry developed during his teaching, namely, the universe, he would say, is not a collection of objects, but a communion of subjects. So that publication was titled A Communion of Subjects, and it explored the relationship of the religions of the world to animals. So you can see there's a movement here towards investigating the question of human relationships with the living world. We followed in 2018 with a very small conference at the Oak Spring conference, the Mellon Estate, since that family has passed on and has left funding for a research-oriented facility in Virginia. In 2018, we held a conference, Living Earth Community. That conference and all of the materials are online at our Forum on Religion and Ecology website. So I mentioned this historical background because our plan was to locate the Living Earth Community website on the Forum website. And as we thought about that presentation, namely on the question of a living earth community in a website which was mounted to celebrate and explore the religions of the world, we saw that there might be problems, especially from the Abrahamic traditions, some participants in those traditions, who any attention to the natural world as not only living, but sacred, deeply meaningful, indeed, as some might say, the presence of the divine, say in pantheism, or the living world as participating in the divine, in, say, the term panentheism. I'll speak more of these things, or maybe when we talk together again, talk about these issues. So we decided on a separate website so that we might remove the possibility of both offending and of also giving this material its own vibrant integrity. So the mounting of the website occurred in a year and a half then from that summer travel. And on October 1st of last year, 2025, we opened the website and it has been heavily attended ever since. We're extremely pleased with the site because we see it as advancing questions that create, that open up areas of uncertainty for discussion among people who are willing to deal with questions that have no closure at this point. One question might be, what's the nature of consciousness? If we're talking about living, what do we mean by living? And consciousness might be one way of addressing that question. When we go to the website with Marianne, I think we'll see in the very first wing of the website, that question is front and center. So the sense of positioning a website that would raise as many questions as it gave answers. The website is organized in 3 wings, and perhaps it would be good, Marianne, if we looked at the website now. These three wings are the intelligences of nature. If I can go back to one of the earlier comments I was making, we asked Tyler Nelson to do research on sentience in the natural world. When Tyler and his colleague had done their research, and when we developed a team to develop this website, Mary Evelyn and I gave over to them the creative potential to really build this site. And so the team that mounted this website, a forum team, has really done wonderful work led by Tara Trapani, who lives in Vermont, and ably guided by Elizabeth McAnally, our webmaster, who lives in Berkeley. And our team, you can see, is around the continent, so we have a number of perspectives on these issues. But this team came back to us and said, this word sentience, we feel, does not have real traction for the audience that we're trying to reach. So you can see immediately the whole idea of the language and the terms that we're using have been much discussed both by the team and by those who have participated in giving us feedback. And so the research on sentience in nature, the team proposed that we use the term intelligences of nature to try and bring the viewer of this site more immediately into what we are trying to do. So thanks, Marianne, for highlighting under intelligence of nature. If we look at the general statement, let's just see what's being said here. The question of, again, human exceptionalism. Are humans the only species with intelligence and feelings? And then it goes on to raise the challenges in this regard. Underlying this statement and underlying this whole website is the question of human exclusivity. Are we humans the only ones with intelligence and feelings? Are we humans the only ones with consciousness? The question has been answered now for ages by innumerable people, but we have been, as a human, significantly guided into response to this question by the science community, which has been very heavily influenced by the Enlightenment thought of René Descartes and by the positioning of the natural world, everything that is not human, as machine-like, as dead matter. And so the human was the only recognized holder of intelligence and feelings. This website is an effort to deepen our response to the inclusion of the other than human, but it's fair to say that we have had a century of unfolding responses to this question, which has extended the question of intelligence and feeling out into the more than human world, to cite the phrase of David Abram. That's a wonderful contribution he made, that generally more is followed by a dash and then, and more than human, brings us into the question of a relationship of humans with an earth community, which is not simply bounded by the human, but is more than the human. It has its own integrity. So if we go back, Marianne, to underneath intelligences of nature, you can see this exquisite set of areas that within which we're trying to raise this question, namely matter. Go up a bit. Yes, just underneath matter, the broad question. And again, if I can make a reference which may not be available to everyone in the group, but those of you who know the thought of Teilhard de Chardin would immediately appreciate that Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the French Jesuit and paleontologist, was very committed to this question of matter. And he would not, without hesitation, say that consciousness has been in the universe evolutionary process from the beginning. So Teilhard, his dates are 1881 to 1955. He's already provided a response to this question of intelligence in matter or consciousness in matter with an affirmative point. But Teilhard would have been considered a very marginal voice in this regard until, I would say, the last 30 years. We have begun to completely revisit these questions now from the quantum perspective, from the perspective of the next category of microbiology, the sense now of the cellular basis of consciousness gives a whole new perspective to these questions of consciousness and the relationship of the mineral and chemical world to the emergence of cellular life. So the divide or the dualism between matter and human is now sharply questioned. And the next category of fungi, this is a remarkable area, which many of you might be aware that the mycelial dimensions of reality now are expanding so quickly that it's hard to keep up with all of the research that's being done in the significance of fungi in maintaining our living world and maintaining the living earth community. So moving then to plants and animals, this first wing, if we scroll down, Marianne, to see the areas of research down below the green, you can see in each area we're undertaking the question in a variety of ways. Generally, you'll find books in each region. Here we have statements and more information on journals and articles, engaged projects, and finally multimedia. I would encourage all of you to look through these areas. But Marianne, if we go to statements first, I think it's very interesting to see who is making statements about intelligence of nature. This first statement, 2024, so it's quite recent, and this is an influence on Mary Evelyn and myself. This was a group of scientists, and when you go into this, and let's not go into it now, but if you go into this site, the listing of scientists who have signed on to this project in an affirmative way is staggering. It's stunning. They're from all over the planet. And this conference at New York University on the question of animal consciousness is marked by this declaration, which I find is a remarkable watershed because it ends with a call. Let's go down just here at the very bottom of this statement. It calls for proactive steps to reduce welfare risk for vertebrates and many invertebrates as research continues to evolve. This is a statement which ends with a call to activism. In the science community, this has been a prohibited area. It's too strong a term, perhaps. I'm prone to hyperbole, if you haven't guessed already. But in the science community, and Mary Evelyn and I have taught for the last 20 years at Yale School of the Environment, dedicated to the science agenda, and activism at our School of the Environment was frowned upon. Here we have really a remarkable statement where scientists are realizing some kind of affirmative action on the part of the science community is needed for this endangered moment that we're in. If you go farther on, Marianne, the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness is earlier. It does not have the strong activist. And then the European Union protocol is much more careful on this in this regard. But these are remarkable statements. If I can end just with this little statement here, we have just 3 statements. By the end of this year, by the end of 2026, we could have 5 times this. The sense of the one statement which is absent here, but it is on the website, are statements from indigenous people. So we wanted to focus here on the science community, but the statements on the consciousness and awareness of a livingness of the earth is a major contribution from indigenous communities around the planet on this website as a whole. So the first wing of this website on sentience and nature, or the intelligences of nature, then it's a remarkable exploration of this question of living, the question of livingness, of consciousness, of the idea of agency in the natural world. Let's go on to the second wing. I just want to check my time. Bob, you said we go till 5:30.
That's our scheduled time. If you'd like, I mean, and if I'm happy to stay on a little past that, and those who are able to with their schedules can stay with us. That'd be fine.
Good. Bob, if I move a bit quicker in the next 15 minutes and do the next 2 wings as well as my 3 points, could we then have 15 minutes and then the extra time for conversation and questions?
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Good. So, Marianne, if you go under ecological worldviews, again, if the question we gave to our researchers was, what's the research now on intelligences of nature? And we use the word sentience, and you can see this is now a very rich site. The adjoining question was, what is the human response? If you look at this list, isn't this remarkable to think about this long a list of responses that we know now in the human community, and it does not begin with indigenous communities. In our Forum on Religion and Ecology website, we have a very dedicated and large collection addressing indigenous traditions. So we did not focus exclusively on indigenous peoples and their traditions on the Living Earth Community website, but you can see it's embedded here in the very first entry, namely animism. Animism is a term developed it's a very old term, of course, but its contemporary usage in the modern period was generally laid upon or put upon, or better, imposed upon indigenous people to suggest that they looked at the world as animate, that there were spiritual presences in the world, and certainly that was proof of their inferiority as human beings, because it proved that there was no such thing that could be known by science, namely spiritual presences in groves or in mountains or in rivers. We could not find such presences. So this term animism was used as a derogatory term. Perhaps the way to understand the way it's being used here, there's a rather significant article revisiting animism by a wonderful scholar at in Tel Aviv, no, in Jerusalem at the Hebrew University, and she wrote this article on revisiting animism, which is the classic reversal of the Enlightenment position and redefining the whole idea of animism as understanding the possibility of a living world. So this whole set of terminology and of topics underneath the ecological worldviews, is trying to bring us into the question of human responses. So if we can, Marianne, can we go back to the ecological worldviews, and let's save these topics. If you go to ecological worldviews again, I'm sorry, go up and just put your cursor so we can look at the
Oh,
list.
yes. Okay.
Let's come back to this if anyone has questions about what these refer to. So I'd like to move on, unless anyone wants me to address any one of them right now. Bob, do you think any one would be helpful?
Perhaps if there's a particular question, let me see, I'm going to have to, I think, remove your spotlight for a second. If anybody had a question to address, you can raise your hand or use the icon.
And we can come back to this in the question time also.
Okay, let's proceed then. I'm not seeing
Good.
anybody urgently.
So when we initiated the research project, it had two wings, as you might recall: the sentience wing, the intelligences of nature, and the human responses, ecological worldviews. The team came up very happily from the standpoint of Mary Evelyn and myself with the third wing, Earth Law. In our study with Thomas Berry, this incredible thinker, Thomas Berry, who called himself a geologian, he was by training a cultural historian. At the end of his life, he lived to be 94 years old. From his 80s until his death, he turned a new corner. He was typically doing that his whole life long. He turned from cultural historical studies of cosmology and the stories that people told of reality to the environmental concern in 1970. And by the 2000s, he was raising the question that the only way we might be able to preserve our human relationships with the living earth is if we are able to establish legal boundaries for the human presence, which considers its demands upon the world as unlimited, the limitless human. So Berry began to think about legal dimensions to hold not simply regulatory, but literally in the court of law, to hold human sense of avarice and greed at bay. But he was deeply suspicious of our legal community around the planet, especially in the American context, deeply suspicious that they would not be willing to undertake the research and investigation and policy making to come up with laws to hold human greed in check. So he used the term earth jurisprudence rather than rights of nature. Rights of nature was already an active idea, and he was aware of it, but he wanted to question the term rights. He had a humorous take on it. I love this. Our former dean at the School of the Environment, Gus Beth, for in my mind, the major environmentalist from the 1970s, Gus Beth loves this line of Thomas Berry. Gus comes out of Yale Law School, and he developed several major environmental programs in Washington, D.C. Let me not go down that direction right now. Gus loved this line of Thomas Berry. Humans developed the concept of rights and then gave them all to themselves. So this summarizes Berry's suspicion of the human having any capacity to recognize the rights of nature. So he used the word jurisprudence to indicate he was searching for a new area. And I think this third wing, name, which our team wanted to call Earth Law, that's what it's trying to get at. That globally now, we are seeing something happening in the human community which is radically new. Around the world, there are places that are beginning to assert that rivers or mountains or groves of trees have the right to exist. And if we look at the first statement, I think we'll see now where the first statement, Marianne, in blue here, the blue, yeah,
Okay.
that these statements are remarkable efforts that are emerging around the planet now, and from indigenous communities especially. And this is a radically wide open area of activism wedded to legal concerns, as well as philosophical understanding and all of the language that has to be developed to talk about the livingness of rivers. One area, if we go down a bit, we might come to some statements from indigenous peoples. We can see these very different statements here. Thomas Berry's article. I'm thinking of a different site that has the indigenous a declaration of the rights of Mother Earth, which is at another location. I can lean here on Myers Rock, though. This is Uluru at the image at the top, this rock on the top of this picture.
The photo at the top, Marianne.
Oh,
Photo at the
sorry.
top is
Yes.
the focus of Australian Aboriginal or Native people in Australia to develop earth rights with regard to Uluru, this sacred being having rights in its own integrity. So earth law is a part of the third wing of the site, which is attempting to explore what is emerging in different regions of the world: Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Oceania, especially indigenous peoples in these areas, North America, South America, and Europe. The dominant societies, say also in the United States, where cities like Toledo made an effort to declare Lake Erie granting it rights, and of course, what was the pushback from the legal community by those who were unwilling to entertain giving rights to Lake Erie because it might put the legal system in extreme binding obligations to the rights that might be given to the lake. But it's now moving across the country. We have more and more areas which are beginning to explore these particular perspectives. If I can just make three final remarks. I wanted to say that this
Do you want to leave the website up, or should we can close it down?
We can close it down, and Marianne can bring it back to us if someone has a question about
There
it.
you go. There you go.
Thanks, Bob, for catching that. And sorry for my breathless pace here. It's a function of Mary Evelyn and myself having retired recently from teaching and having realized that we haven't retired at all. We've refired. And our retirement has made us busier than we were during our teaching careers. But these three last areas that I just wanted to briefly open up possibilities, namely a shamanistic approach to this website. Thomas Berry would say in some of his most profound work that he saw himself as moving into a role that might be associated with those healers and religious personalities found among indigenous peoples that were often given the term or identified with the term shaman from a Central Asian people, the Tungus people, to designate a particular religious role. And it's of course a very complicated subject, but one area of these healers' capacity to heal individuals or communities was because of their relationship with animals, their relationship with places, their relationship with the reality around them as sacred. And the intention of this website is to raise that question again, that we are recovering relationships, human earth relationships, which function, we believe, at the level of religiosity or spirituality, but they are not adequately captured by many of the religions of the world. So something new is happening in human consciousness. Something new is emerging as we recognize the world around us as crucial for the formation of the brain that we have in the Cenozoic period, for our very basic survival, for the emergence of consciousness on this planet, which we took solely to ourselves. So this shamanistic approach is an effort to enter into what indigenous peoples would call a lifeway or cosmovision, an understanding of human-earth relationships as opening a deeper understanding of who we are. The second approach that I wanted to just briefly touch on is a justice approach. Eco-justice might be one way of talking about environmental justice, the sense that the interdependence, the ecological dimension of reality calls for the human to understand we need to stand up and give our voices over to preserving life in areas that are endangered, especially when their endangerment threatens other members of the Earth community. So this sense of a eco-justice entry into this portal is very akin to the Earth Law, the third wing. And just as much as that third wing is radically new in terms of life on this planet, it's not new in terms of indigenous people. My hyperbolic consciousness is showing itself again. I'm a modern human being. I'm totally given over to late capitalism and the whole bureaucratic mentality as an academic. Of course, I'm hopelessly mired in modernity, but I'm struggling, I'm groping to get out of it. And one of the ways I find out of it is to recognize there are justice issues. So this website is foregrounding many of the voices. Those of you who go under the fungi section and look at some of the multimedia, and you'll meet Merlin Sheldrake. If you want to meet a shamanic personality and the humility of someone who comes from such a marvelous family, Rupert Sheldrake, and his wife's name escaped me right now, but I'm shamed not to have her name, because they have given us such gifts in their two children, Merlin and his brother Cosmo. Merlin is an expert in fungi, and his deep humility is evident in those presentations. Let me conclude by saying just a word about the contemplation approach. I'm trying to signal here the contribution of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, Thomas Berry, Mary Evelyn Tucker, Brian Swim, and those of us who are attending this lineage that I'm associating with the word contemplative, because there are a number of people now who have an understanding of the therapeutic relationship with nature. And this contemplative opening gives us a sense of a response to the deep uncertainties of our time. The mystical communities in all of the world's religions make us very aware of those people at the boundaries, often called heretics or subject to exclusion and scorn because of their commitment to a unitive experience of the divine, or to a sense of divine diversity, and that diversity could never be encapsulated in any language. Consequently, unitive language to some mystics means nothing. It's so differentiated. And then there are those mystical and contemplative experiences that talk about difference in unity. And that's where Teilhard was located. Teilhard spoke a great deal of unity, but he rarely missed an occasion to talk about unity differentiates. And that's his magnificent contribution as a scientist and as an evolutionary scientist, seeing the incredible diversity that has been flung forth in the evolution, in the emergence of universe evolution. So Teilhard is such an interesting example of this contemplative opening to living Earth community. And if I can end with his sense of matter spirit, not two dimensions, not two separate realities, but two dimensions of the same reality. Reality has matter spirit components. And for Teilhard, then, spirit is a temporal dimension. Spirit is pulling us into the future, pulling matter into the future. And this powerful insight that Teilhard had of movement in the evolutionary process of spirit moving matter towards in greater complexity consciousness. So again, I want to end with this emphasis on consciousness as a major entryway into the Living Earth community website. And let's have some conversation if it's possible.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, John. It's obvious that an amazing amount of work and wisdom has gone into the idea for this and to execute it beautifully. I've caught several references in your comment. I'm going to take advantage, just ask the first question. You've mentioned a couple of times about how things will be expanding and new items will be appearing on the site. Can you say just a couple of words about how that happens, how this thing keeps updated? If people have suggestions for other resources that might be appropriate, is there a way to send those in?
Yes.
How's that operating?
So the Forum on Religion and Ecology has a newsletter, and anyone who signs up for that newsletter knows that Elizabeth McAnally, the webmaster who sends out that letter, and she develops it with the team, that she will receive all suggestions, changes, or questions with regard to both the forum website and the Living Earth community website. So we are intentionally asking for people to communicate new insights and new research that they see that we might be able to mount it. When Marianne went into any one of the particular sites, you could see that the references were somewhat limited. Some sites will have like 10 references under statements or under books, certainly not exhaustive, but we wanted to mount what we thought were really leading edge statements in this regard. They will be updated. So we will be changing, and that's a long-term, our commitment to this site to bring forward what we receive from the viewers and also what we become aware of through our research.
Great, excellent. Very happy to hear that. I see Betty has already, she knows our prompt. I'm just going to mention to everybody
Hi,
else,
Betty.
if you have a question, please find the raise hand icon either on your Zoom toolbar. It might be under more. It's a pretty fluid thing. So Betty, yes, let's please ask us your question.
Well, I have kind of a comment and a question. The comment is regarding, you're talking about the language that we use and the importance of finding the right way of expressing something, plus indigenous wisdom. And I'm pretty sure this was a Pachamama event that I saw, Pachamama Alliance event with an Andean healer. I believe his first name was Arkan. And he was talking about the issue. The phrase he used was human supremacy.
Yes.
And that was the first time I've heard that, we hear a lot of supremacy in general, white supremacy, all this stuff, but human supremacy, I think is such a important phrase. And well, I'll leave that part of it. I think it's so important, and it seems like the website is the big picture of the website is trying to deal with that issue, human issue. And the quote that you gave from I'm spacing it out. Speth, from Dr. Speth.
Oh, yes, Gus Speth, right. He was
Yeah,
from
Gus
Thomas
Speth.
Berry, but Gus loved it. Yeah, about rights.
Yes, about how humans created this concept and then took it all as
Betty,
their own.
you've
Yeah.
asked an award-winning question. I'm definitely sending you an award
Oh,
because on a number of levels. First, you mentioned language, and just think of the word living. Who determines how we shall define living? So you'll find under intelligences in or of nature, you'll find many individuals who are definitely struggling with that question. Just think of the cellular basis of consciousness. They're struggling with that question. One more comment. On the intelligences of nature wing, those of you who go to the multimedia, if you see Jeremy Narby, there are several videos of him and podcasts. Don't miss one if you can, because he will talk, Betty, to your question of supremacy of the human. And I find it's a very interesting phrase because it does not imply the erasure that some people, or the political correctness, if you will, that some people connect with supremacy, in which they really want to challenge whatever comes before the word supremacy. They want to draw attention to it as something to be removed. Human supremacy, I think when that indigenous elder, he's not simply speaking about a fantasy, he's speaking about what he sees as a reality, that this sense of human exclusivity has marshaled and moved the West for over 5 centuries. We have imposed upon the planet this dominating presence of human supremacy. And now we're revisiting it, but in terms of the administration of the United States, now the political administration, we have a perfect example of the troubles we're in revisiting that question. We really don't know as a civilization, and I'm very interested in that question of the meaning of civilization, because Mary Evelyn and I are very keen on ecological civilization in the Chinese context. But your question then, Betty, really brings us back to what the website is trying to put our eyes on. And thank you very much for the question regarding language, terms, and the question of human supremacy, and how in the world will we be able to move beyond this? If I would just end my response, many of you will run across in the plants or trees section, Suzanne Sumard. Many of you already know her work. There's some interviews with her. Talk about a person who has run head up or head on, bumped her head against the science community, who accused her of trying to break human exceptionalism, human supremacy. That she was trying to argue for the sense of communication, of semiotics, not only among trees, but between trees and another species, fungi. And now, of course, she's revered for her insights. Thank you. Thanks, Betty.
I had a second question as well, and that was in the Earth Law section under the global category
Section, yeah.
is the movement to create laws against ecocide.
Yes.
Ecocide International is a group that is doing amazing things to bring that about, and I wonder if that is mentioned on the website.
Yes, it's
Great.
explored. Insofar as I know, Betty, Thomas Berry is the first one I know to use that term. He spoke in the already by 1970. Those of us who were students of his can hear him to this day saying, "We in the human community, we have responded ethically to the idea of homicide." The cutting of the human, homo incidos, the cutting of the human is unethical. We are even reflecting on genocide now, and we have come to an understanding of that. But ecocide or geocide, we have no ethical reflection on these categories of destruction and of tragic assault. And so the website is intending to open this question that you're raising, Betty, about the meaning of ecocide. How are we understanding it? We're trying to address it not with the sense of closure, but rather opening to the uncertainties and ambiguities that inventing new language brings us towards.
And one last thing, when you're mentioning civilization, I can't resist bringing this up. I don't know if anyone's heard of Swami Beyondananda, who is a humorist and philosopher and whatever, otherwise known as Steve Behrman. And I forget if he was quoting somebody or he made this up, but he said, "I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is civilization as we know it is coming to an end. The good news is civilization as we know it is coming to an end."
Yes, yes.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Betty. I don't see any more hands raised. So perhaps it's time for us to come to a conclusion, unless you got any final words you wanted to offer us, John. I have a closing for us when we're ready to go.
Good. I just want to repeat Thomas Berry's, if you will, his mantra. The universe is not a collection of objects, but a communion of subjects. The world, as having its own subjectivity, is speaking to us. And isn't it a marvelous and wonderful time to be alive and hear those voices speak? Thanks, Bob. Thank you, everybody.
I thought it would be appropriate to close with some more words of Thomas's that we haven't heard today. But I think it's the optimism and the hope that we are pointed to with this marvelous new resource is reflected here. So I would just offer, to the children who swim beneath the waves of the sea, to those who live in the soils of the earth, to the children of the flowers in the meadow and the trees of the forest, to all those children who roam the land and the winged ones who fly with the winds, to the human children too, that all children may go into the future as a single sacred community.
Marvelous.
So thank you all
Thank
for joining us today. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again, John, for your
Thank you.
time and your insights. Really looking forward to exploring this resource further. And I think it'll be an ongoing gift to us all. Thank you
Good.
much. And thanks
All
to
best in the year ahead, everyone.
Happy
likewise.
New Year.
Happy
Happy,
New Year.
happy.
Thank you all.